Why do millions of people still, decades later, remember Soviet ice cream with warmth, as if it were something more than just food? It seems like an ordinary dessert, but behind it is a whole era. In the Soviet Union, ice cream was not just a treat for children. Its production was controlled at the highest level, literally like the production of aeroplanes or equipment for the army. The state strictly monitored quality, composition, even storage temperature. Each factory had special inspectors who were responsible for one thing only: that the ice cream was made according to the standard and without the slightest deviation. To understand, at that time, ice cream was considered almost a strategic product. And this is not an exaggeration. Its production was supervised by government agencies, and recipes were approved at the level of ministries. That is why the taste of Soviet ice cream was so stable that people remembered it for life. There was no such thing as tasty ice cream in one city and not in another. The flavor was the same everywhere, delicate, creamy, without any extraneous flavors. It was this stability that made people feel confident. If you bought ice cream for 7 or 20 kopecks, you were sure to get a quality product. For example, in Moscow in the 70s, ice cream in waffle cups was sold in any Soyuz Pechat kiosk. And even if the ice cream traveled thousands of kilometers, its quality remained the same. People stood in queues to buy ice cream because they knew that it would taste exactly the same as it always did. Figures also speak for themselves. According to the USSR Goskomstat, at the end of the 70s, the country produced almost 600,000 tons of ice cream a year. And most of it was correct ice cream according to strict standards, without additives and substitutes. In the USSR, through ice cream, people were shown that the state could provide stability and quality even in small things. For many children, Soviet ice cream was the first introduction to the concept of real and honest quality. Costs for Soviet ice cream were so strict that modern manufacturers are far from them. For example, it was obligatory to use at least 15% of natural cream. No powders, palm oil, artificial substitutes, only real milk, only real cream. At large factories, special laboratories monitored the composition of ice cream. They checked every batch of ice cream. And if even one batch was found to have a deviation, for example, less than normal fat content or incorrect pasteurization temperature, the whole batch was completely destroyed. No talking or attempts to gloss over the problem. Sometimes it was hundreds of kilograms of excellent-looking ice cream, which was simply written off and thrown away. By the numbers, according to the official data of the State Standards Committee, by the end of the 70s, up to 98% of all ice cream batches were subject to control at Soviet factories, and only products that had passed full inspection were put on sale. USSR GOSTs, in reality, worked more rigidly than modern international ISO standards for food products. And also, if a factory manager tried to cheat and save money on natural cream, he could be fired without the right to work in the food industry. Now it becomes clear why the taste of Soviet ice cream was so unforgettable. Everything was based on strict rules and real products. But there is another question that surprises even more. How did it happen that such high-quality, natural ice cream cost literally pennies? Why could even an ordinary schoolchild afford a Palmo beer or Eskimo, although today a similar product costs many times more? The secret was that ice cream production was directly supported by the state. It was specially subsidized, that is, factories received money from the budget to sell ice cream cheaper than the cost price. Even if production was at a loss, the state covered the difference. And they did it consciously. Ice cream was part of the general policy of caring for the people and creating an image of a happy life. The figures speak for themselves. According to the USSR State Statistics Committee, about 30% of the cost of ice cream was covered by the state budget. For customers, this meant only one thing: Quality ice cream was available in any city, in any family, in any season. Children could easily spend their pocket money on ice cream because 7 to 20 kopecks could be saved in a day. And there was no need to choose between buying food and sweets. Ice cream was as affordable as a newspaper or a bus ticket. And another interesting point, in the USSR, the pricing policy was so stable that the ice cream, for example, cost the same 20 kopecks for many years in a row, without the price hikes we are used to seeing today. In 1958, Brussels hosted the World Expo, Expo 58. It was the largest international exhibition of that time, where countries from all over the world brought their best achievements: technology, food, industrial goods, scientific inventions. The Soviet Union then wanted to show that it was not only a military superpower, but also a country where people lived well, ate quality food, and were proud of their standard of living. One of the visiting cards of the USSR at the exhibition was ice cream. The USSR presented its classic cream ice cream made strictly according to GOST. It differed from its Western analogs by its very high fat content, incredibly tender texture, and absence of artificial additives. Against the background of American ice cream with preservatives and added vegetable fat, the Soviet product looked simply amazing. The tasting jury, an international commission of food industry experts, recognized Soviet ice cream as one of the best products of the exhibition. As a result, the USSR received a gold medal for the quality and flavor of its ice cream. The ice cream was so tasty that huge queues of not only visitors, but also other exhibitors lined up at the Soviet pavilion. After the victory at Expo 58, Soviet ice cream was actively mentioned in the Western press as the benchmark of natural flavor. But how did it happen that among all types of ice cream, it was Plombier and Eskimo that became legends for decades to come? Why did these varieties become covered with stories and myths that are still alive today? Let's start with Plombier. Real Plombier, according to the Soviet GOST, was not just creamy. It was almost like frozen cream. It contained more natural milk fat than most modern premium ice cream varieties. For comparison, back then, the fat content of Plombier had to be at least 15 to 20%, and nowadays even expensive ice cream rarely has more than 12%. That's why that flavor was so rich and memorable. Plombier was a favorite of everyone, from kids to old people. It was eaten plain, added to coffee, served at celebrations. A small waffle cup with delicate ice cream cost pennies, but gave real happiness. And now, about Eskimo. The first chocolate popsicle in the USSR appeared in 1937, and not for everyone, but as a real delicacy for the chosen ones. Eskimo was covered with a thick layer of real chocolate, not glaze as they do nowadays. That's why it melted slowly, leaving a bright, deep flavor of chocolate and cream. As for the waffle cup, it was, you could say, the universal soldier of Soviet ice cream. You could buy it in almost any kiosk. It was very cheap and was made in such a way that a child could comfortably hold it and eat it without getting dirty. By the way, waffles were also baked according to separate strict standards, so that they did not get soggy from ice cream and remained crispy. In summer, in the cities, you could see whole queues to the ice cream stalls. And more often than not, people would take a waffle cup or ice cream on a stick. These varieties of ice cream became popular not because of advertising, but because of real quality and availability. Plombier, Eskimo, and Cup have played their part in shaping the taste of happiness for a whole generation of people. How was it possible to achieve such impeccable taste and quality in the conditions of a huge country? After all, making ice cream at home for the family is one thing, but producing it on an industrial scale so that it remains perfect in every city is quite another. In fact, everything was very serious. The production of Soviet ice cream took place in special factories that were built and equipped almost like strategic enterprises. Some lines, where cream was mixed, milk pasteurized, and ice cream frozen, were guarded in the same way as factories producing military equipment. Guards checked employees, controlled access to the premises, and even monitored the movement of products. Why such protection? The answer is simple. Ice cream in the USSR was the face of the country. It had to be flawless, especially when it was shown at international exhibitions. Any mistake could ruin the reputation of the state. Therefore, quality was monitored with unprecedented rigor. Some employees of golden factories signed documents on non-disclosure of technological secrets as employees of closed scientific research institutes. It seems that ice cream is still sold at every step. On shop windows, you can see inscriptions Gost, Plombier, traditional recipe. But why is it that when you taste it, it doesn't feel the same? The flavor is not as bright, not as creamy as in my childhood. The mystery here lies in the changes that took place after the collapse of the USSR. Previously, ice cream was made only from natural milk, cream, and sugar. Now, in many cases, natural cream has been replaced by vegetable fats. It is cheaper, stored longer, and more profitable for the producers. But it was natural cream that gave that soft, rich aftertaste, which was remembered for a lifetime. One more thing. Since 1991, the standards for ice cream have been revised more than 15 times. Previously, Gost required a minimum of 15% milk fat, but now it is possible to produce a product with 8% and with the addition of various stabilizers and flavor enhancers. Because of this, even outwardly similar ice cream actually differs greatly in composition and flavor from Soviet ice cream. The flavor of Soviet ice cream turned out to be unreproducible, not because of technology, but because of the rejection of natural ingredients for the sake of profit. The USSR ice cream has remained in history as one of the few products that really united people, from children to adults, from ordinary workers to the party elite. And maybe that is why we still remember with such warmth not only the dessert itself, but also the era when a small glass of ice cream could bring real happiness.